She brought her child to an interview and was rejected on the spot, until a billionaire CEO walked in, and everything changed in an instant. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because, tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Samantha Hayes balanced her toddler, Noah, on one hip while juggling a stack of documents in her other hand. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain and the city's familiar mix of exhaust and coffee. She weaved through crowded sidewalks, each step a delicate negotiation between urgency and caution, careful not to trip over the tiny shoes padding beside her. As a single mother, every day was a balancing act between survival and ambition. Today, she clutched tightly to hope. A position had opened at Callahan Enterprises, one that could finally provide stability, opportunity, and a chance to prove that her capabilities extended far beyond what society expected of a woman in her position. She straightened her blouse, tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, and rehearsed polite, confident phrases under her breath. Noah tugged at her hand. "Mommy, I'm hungry," he whispered, his small voice a mixture of trust and dependence. Samantha knelt briefly, pressing her forehead to his, and smiled. "Almost there, love. Just a little further." The sleek office building of Callahan Enterprises loomed above them, reflective glass catching sunlight like a mirror to the sky. Samantha's chest tightened. Interviews had always carried a mix of promise and terror, but today's stakes felt monumental. She adjusted Noah in her arms, took a deep breath, and stepped through the revolving doors. Inside, the receptionist greeted her with a practiced smile, her eyes flicking momentarily to Noah. Samantha offered a polite smile back, her nerves a tight coil. She wasn't just entering a building, she was stepping into a world that often judged mothers for daring to show their responsibility alongside ambition. Minutes later, Samantha sat in the interview room. The panel of managers glanced up at her, eyes calculating. Noah wriggled slightly in her lap, his small hands reaching for a toy she had brought. One of the interviewers raised an eyebrow. "Did you really bring your child to an interview?" Samantha's throat tightened. "Yes," she said calmly, though her pulse raced. "I had no alternative today." Noah's care arrangements fell through. "I hope it won't be a problem." The panel exchanged subtle glances. The rejection was almost instantaneous. "I'm sorry," one said, "but we don't accommodate children in interviews. You'll have to reschedule or—" Samantha's heart sank, shame and frustration mingling in a bitter taste. She wanted to defend herself, to explain, to demonstrate that competence wasn't negated by motherhood. But before words could form, the doors opened. A tall figure entered, the air shifting with authority and presence. It was Callahan Enterprises CEO, Alexander Callahan, a man whose reputation for brilliance and decisiveness preceded him. His gaze swept the room, landing on Samantha and Noah. Something in his expression, a mixture of surprise and recognition, halted the room's tension. Alexander stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Is there a problem here?" His eyes met Samantha's. "Because from what I see, she's already managing more than most adults in this room." Samantha blinked, unsure whether to feel relief or continued anxiety. Noah wriggled again, and Alexander offered a small, genuine smile. "And the young man seems equally impressive," he said, kneeling slightly to Noah's level, earning a delighted giggle. The interview room, once heavy with judgment, now hummed with a different energy. Samantha felt a spark of hope she hadn't allowed herself in months, a possibility that her courage, her dedication, and her love for her child might finally be recognized. The room was thick with quiet judgment. The interview panel's faces were polite yet rigid, their eyes conveying the unspoken message: children do not belong in professional spaces. Samantha gripped Noah tighter, her heart pounding as she tried to maintain composure. She had rehearsed this meeting countless times in her mind, but nothing had prepared her for this scrutiny. Noah shifted restlessly, tugging at her blouse, and Samantha whispered, "Almost done, love. Just stay with me." The sound of her voice, soft and steady, contrasted sharply with the cold atmosphere in the room. Each manager's glance felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, a silent accusation that she had overstepped by being both mother and professional in the same moment. "I'm sorry," one of the interviewers said again, her tone clipped. "We simply cannot continue under these circumstances. Perhaps you should return when childcare is arranged." Samantha's jaw tightened, emotions flaring. She wanted to argue, to explain that her child did not diminish her capability. But words caught in her throat. Pride wrestled with necessity. The need to secure the position clashed with the humiliation of being dismissed for what she could not control. The room's tension broke when the doors opened with a soft whoosh. Alexander Callahan stepped in, moving with deliberate ease, his presence commanding without intimidation. His eyes swept across the room, landing on Samantha and Noah. A flicker of recognition passed through his gaze, sharp and discerning. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cutting through the formal stiffness, "but what is the problem here?" He looked directly at the panel and then back at Samantha. "From where I stand, she is managing a full-time career while raising a child. That requires skill, resilience, and determination, not disqualification." The interviewers shifted uncomfortably. One attempted to protest, but Alexander held up a hand, silencing the room without aggression. His attention returned to Samantha, his eyes softening. "And your son," he added with a subtle smile, "is clearly well cared for and confident. That speaks volumes about your character." Samantha felt a mixture of relief and disbelief. Her lips parted, but no words emerged immediately. She had expected embarrassment, judgment, perhaps even ridicule, but not this acknowledgement. Noah giggled, reaching out toward Alexander's hand, and the CO bent slightly to meet him, allowing the boy to pat his wrist. The warmth of that simple interaction sent a ripple through Samantha's chest. The room, once cold and hostile, shifted instantly. Conversations that had been stilted and formal now carried the unspoken understanding that Samantha's presence, her dedication, and her dual responsibilities were impressive, not problematic. Alexander's intervention reframed the moment, turning humiliation into recognition. Samantha straightened in her chair, a cautious spark of confidence igniting. She looked at Alexander, her gratitude unspoken but unmistakable. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice low yet steady. Alexander nodded, his gaze lingering in a way that conveyed more than professional courtesy. "You don't need permission to succeed," he said softly. "You already have everything it takes." The collision of worlds, the rigid corporate environment, the scrutiny of the panel, and the unexpected presence of a CEO who saw her fully, shifted the story's trajectory. In that moment, Samantha realized that courage, honesty, and persistence could not only withstand judgment but could compel recognition, respect, and opportunity. As the interview resumed under Alexander's watchful eye, the atmosphere was transformed. Samantha's focus sharpened, her confidence, once tentative, grew with each answer. Noah sat calmly beside her, observing the interaction with quiet curiosity, a small reminder of the stakes that fueled her determination. By the time the session ended, it was clear that the earlier rejection had been overturned, not merely by authority, but by insight, empathy, and the recognition of true capability. Samantha left the room with her head held high, Noah skipping slightly at her side. Alexander lingered, offering a supportive smile that promised guidance, attention, and perhaps a connection that would extend beyond this encounter. After the interview, Samantha walked briskly down the marble hallway, Noah's small hand gripping hers tightly. Her mind churned with conflicting emotions, relief that Alexander had intervened, frustration at the initial judgment, and the lingering embarrassment of having been rejected in front of her child. She wanted to celebrate her resilience, but pride and caution kept her quiet. She had survived, yet the sting of scrutiny lingered, a reminder that the world rarely softened its gaze for single mothers trying to rise. At home, she collapsed onto the couch, Noah curled beside her. She watched him play with a small toy car, the rhythmic clicking echoing in the quiet apartment. Her heart ached with both love and fear. Could she ever navigate a world that saw her as less for having a child? Alexander's intervention had been a lifeline, but it also unsettled her. He had looked at her differently, admiration, respect, and perhaps something more, but she wasn't ready to trust that kind of attention. Meanwhile, Alexander returned to his office, the city sprawling beneath his glass walls. He replayed the morning's events, the way Samantha had handled the panel's judgment with grace under pressure. The intelligence and poise she displayed were magnetic, yet it wasn't just competence that captivated him, it was her courage in a moment that would have broken most people. He was unused to feeling protective, intrigued, and drawn all at once, and he resented that this woman, a stranger in his world, had awakened these unfamiliar impulses. Over the next few days, their paths intersected sporadically. Samantha avoided unnecessary encounters, focusing on her work and Noah, yet couldn't ignore the quiet pull she felt whenever Alexander's presence loomed nearby. He, in turn, observed her from a distance, careful not to overstep boundaries, yet each moment he watched only intensified his fascination. They existed in parallel worlds, connected yet separate, aware of the other, yet restrained by pride, fear, and circumstance. One afternoon, an accidental meeting in the office kitchen brought the tension to the surface. Samantha reached for a cup, only to find Alexander already there. Their hands brushed briefly, and the spark of connection startled them both. Samantha's eyes met his, a mixture of caution and curiosity reflecting back. "Good afternoon," she said lightly, forcing composure. "Afternoon," he replied, his tone even yet carrying weight. Neither spoke further, though the unspoken acknowledgement of mutual interest lingered between them. It was a delicate tension, an invisible line neither dared to cross. Samantha reminded herself of her priorities: Noah, her career, self-respect. Alexander reminded himself of propriety and the unpredictability of desire. The days stretched, each encounter a subtle reminder of what neither wanted to confront. Samantha's resistance was rooted in fear of vulnerability, of being seen as dependent or weak. Alexander's restraint stemmed from the unfamiliar intensity of emotion and the impossibility of societal expectation. Each moment together amplified both longing and trepidation. At night, Samantha lay beside Noah, his breathing steady against her chest, and reflected on the collision of her professional and personal worlds. She wondered if she could trust someone who lived in such a different reality, someone whose life was ruled by power and wealth. Alexander, on the other side of the city, stared at the skyline from his penthouse, questioning whether he could act on feelings that defied expectation, propriety, and reason. Their resistance, though frustrating, deepened the tension between them. Neither could articulate the pull, yet it shaped every glance, every gesture, every unspoken word. They were drawn together, but fear, pride, and caution created a barrier that neither wanted to dismantle prematurely. The collision of worlds had occurred, yet the path to connection remained obscured by uncertainty. Both were aware of what they desired, yet both wrestled with whether stepping forward would shatter stability, expose vulnerability, or cross unspoken boundaries. A week later, Samantha received a call she hadn't expected. The HR manager explained that Alexander had requested a follow-up meeting, an opportunity for Samantha to present her ideas directly to the CEO. Her heart skipped, a mix of excitement and apprehension. She glanced at Noah, playing quietly in the corner, and reminded herself that this was not only for her career but for the life she wanted to build for him. Entering Alexander's office, she felt a familiar weight in the air: power, authority, and expectation, but this time it carried a subtle difference. He was present, not just as a figure of influence but as someone observing her closely, noticing not just her ideas but the careful thought behind them. His eyes met hers briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. This interaction was different, purposeful, and intensely personal. "You prepared for this," Alexander said, his voice even but warm. "I want to see how you approach the challenges we discussed last week." Samantha nodded, placing her notes neatly on the polished table. "I've restructured the proposal to address the scalability concerns raised by your team. I believe it's viable, both strategically and financially." Alexander leaned back slightly, studying her. He didn't interrupt, didn't dominate. Instead, he observed, letting her articulate her vision. Each word, each explanation, revealed intelligence, insight, and quiet confidence. The CEO, who often controlled every room he entered, was now captivated not by authority but by understanding, a rare and unsettling realization for him. Noah sat on a small chair nearby, coloring quietly, occasionally glancing up with curiosity. Samantha managed the balance with grace, attending to her child while delivering a professional presentation. Alexander's gaze flicked between mother and professional, admiration quietly deepening. He recognized not only capability but resilience, the ability to excel in circumstances that demanded multitasking, patience, and poise. During a brief pause, Alexander leaned forward. "Your approach is methodical. You consider both short-term impact and long-term growth. That's rare." His compliment carried weight. It wasn't flattery, but recognition of competence and foresight. Samantha felt a subtle warmth, the acknowledgement of her efforts resonating deeply. The meeting extended longer than expected. Questions became conversations, critiques became discussions, and a shared goal began to emerge. Samantha noticed the ease with which Alexander listened, challenged thoughtfully, and engaged without condescension. She, in turn, noticed how his authority softened when he encountered genuine intellect, respect, and courage. At one point, a technical glitch caused Noah's tablet to fall, and Samantha instinctively bent to retrieve it. Alexander's hand hovered for a moment, then gently assisted, offering a brief smile. The gesture, small and effortless, reinforced a connection that neither had explicitly acknowledged but both sensed growing stronger. By the end of the session, the professional dynamic had transformed. What had begun as formal observation evolved into mutual respect, shared admiration, and subtle trust. The walls Samantha had maintained, the barriers built to protect her heart and her child, were gently challenged by Alexander's acknowledgement of her competence and integrity. He was no longer just a CEO. He had become a partner in problem-solving, a witness to resilience, and a presence that invited connection. Walking out of the office, Samantha felt a strange combination of exhilaration and trepidation. The interaction had shifted something fundamental. Fear of judgment was now mingled with hope, and cautious admiration was evolving into a pull she could not yet define. Noah clutched her hand as they exited, and she glanced at him, drawing strength from the reminder of why she persisted. Meanwhile, Alexander remained in his office, reflecting on the encounter. The attraction that had begun as curiosity now carried layers of admiration and fascination. He realized that his interest went beyond professional intrigue. It had become personal, invested, and emotionally complicated. Yet restraint remained. Neither would risk rushing a connection too soon. The forced collaboration had revealed qualities in both of them that were impossible to ignore. Respect, intellect, courage, and resilience had created a bridge, one that extended beyond circumstance into the possibility of something more. A week after the follow-up meeting, Samantha sat in a cafe, her laptop open but untouched. Noah played quietly at the table beside her, his small fingers tapping rhythmically on a toy car. Samantha's mind, however, was far from calm. Rumors from the office had begun circulating, whispers questioning her professionalism, judging her presence as a mother in a corporate environment. Each passing comment tightened the knot of anxiety in her chest, threatening the confidence she had painstakingly built. She had hoped Alexander's intervention would shield her, but the judgment had not disappeared entirely. The thought of confronting it directly made her stomach churn. Pride and fear warred within her. She wanted to defend herself, to prove that she was competent, capable, and deserving of respect, but the cost of engaging with criticism so public and pointed was exhausting. Across town, Alexander reviewed the same situation through a different lens. He had heard the subtle whispers, noticed the sideways glances Samantha endured, and felt a rising frustration, not for himself, but for her. He had never experienced admiration that mixed with protectiveness so intensely. Watching her navigate scrutiny and judgment only deepened his interest, yet he hesitated. Acting too openly might overwhelm her or appear patronizing. He feared that missteps could shatter the fragile connection forming between them. The breaking point came unexpectedly. An urgent meeting brought them together in the same conference room, but the tension was palpable. Samantha arrived first, settling Noah in a nearby corner with quiet instructions. Alexander entered moments later, his presence filling the room without effort. His gaze immediately found hers, carrying concern, admiration, and a subtle question. How far could he intervene without overstepping? "Are you all right?" he asked softly, approaching her desk. His voice, calm yet intense, cut through the low hum of the room. Samantha met his eyes, her defenses rising instinctively. "I'm managing," she replied, voice measured, though the tremor beneath betrayed her. "I can handle it." Alexander hesitated, then said plainly, "You don't have to prove anything to anyone here. I see your value." The sincerity in his tone made her pulse quicken. She wanted to believe him, to let go of the burden she carried, but fear of judgment held her back. "It's not that simple," she murmured, staring at the papers before her. "They see me and my child and think it diminishes what I can do. I've worked too hard to let that slide, but—" She trailed off, frustration and vulnerability mingling. Alexander reached out, just enough to brush her hand lightly. The gesture was careful, protective, yet not intrusive. "Then let them underestimate you," he said. "It doesn't change what you're capable of. And it doesn't change what I see." Her chest tightened. The words were comforting, but they also laid bare the complexity of their connection. Admiration, desire, and emotional risk all intertwined. She pulled her hand back slightly, torn between relief and the fear of depending on someone whose world differed so sharply from hers. The final fracture came when a senior manager entered, unaware of the tension, and made a dismissive remark about working mothers. Samantha's composure wavered. Noah shifted nervously beside her. Alexander's expression darkened. His voice, low but firm, silenced the room. "Respect and capability are not defined by circumstance," he said, eyes locked on the manager. "Judgment based on personal situations is unacceptable." Samantha's heart swelled, a mix of gratitude, relief, and embarrassment. She realized the vulnerability she had been shielding for so long was being acknowledged, not with condescension, but with respect and protection. Yet the moment also reminded her how fragile their connection was, how easily societal pressure could intrude. By the time the meeting ended, Samantha and Alexander stood apart, each reflecting on the raw emotional truths laid bare. Fear, pride, and judgment had collided with admiration, respect, and growing attraction. Both understood the stakes. Vulnerability carried risk, but avoiding it threatened connection. The breaking point had arrived, exposing insecurities and desires that could no longer be ignored. That evening, Samantha sat by the kitchen window, Noah asleep in his crib. The city lights outside twinkled like scattered stars, but her mind was anything but calm. She replayed the events of the day, the judgment, the confrontation, and Alexander's quiet defense. Her heart raced at the memory of his touch, the warmth in his gaze, and the recognition in his words. But alongside admiration and relief sat a stubborn fear. Could she truly let someone into her carefully structured life without losing herself or exposing her child to risk? She traced the rim of her coffee cup with her finger, weighing pride against longing. Every instinct screamed caution. Every moment of honesty and vulnerability felt like a gamble, one that could leave her exposed and disappointed. And yet, Alexander had not acted out of pity, control, or obligation. He had seen her strength, intelligence, and dedication, and had responded with respect. Across town, Alexander sat in his office, reviewing proposals but unable to focus. His thoughts drifted endlessly to Samantha, the calm resilience she exhibited under pressure, the tenderness she showed Noah, the intelligence and courage that shone even when she faced unfair judgment. He had spent days restraining himself, questioning whether his admiration bordered on intrusion. Yet he could no longer deny that he wanted more than observation. He wanted connection, partnership, and trust. The decision, for both, was about more than attraction. It was about vulnerability, risk, and the courage to embrace love where fear once ruled. The opportunity arrived unexpectedly. Samantha received an invitation to a weekend workshop hosted at Alexander's office to brainstorm new strategic ideas for the company. It was an unusual arrangement, but it offered her a chance to demonstrate her vision directly while allowing Alexander to observe her in action. When she arrived, Noah in tow, Alexander greeted them with his usual composure, softened by an undercurrent of warmth. "I'm glad you came," he said, handing Samantha a folder. His eyes held a question, an unspoken hope. Would she trust him? Would she step forward? "I wouldn't miss it," she replied, a trace of courage threading her voice. She felt the weight of her choice pressing down, the decision to step beyond fear, to embrace possibility, to acknowledge the pull she had been resisting for weeks. The workshop began, and as they collaborated, the connection between them deepened. Each insight she offered was met with genuine consideration, each suggestion met with constructive dialogue. Alexander engaged fully, not as a CEO imposing authority, but as a partner respecting capability and vision. Every interaction built trust, every exchange strengthened recognition, and every shared moment chipped away at the walls Samantha had built around her heart. During a brief break, Noah wandered toward Alexander, curious and unafraid. Samantha held her breath. Alexander knelt slightly, smiling gently. "Hello, little one," he said. Noah's laughter rang through the room, and Samantha felt her resolve soften. The choice was clear: she could retreat, guarded and isolated, or she could embrace trust, allowing herself and her child to be seen, supported, and cared for. Samantha stepped closer, placing a hand briefly on Alexander's arm, a gesture of acknowledgement and acceptance. "I trust you," she said quietly. The words were simple but carried the weight of weeks of fear, pride, and longing. Alexander met her gaze, warmth and relief in his eyes. "And I'll do my best to honor that trust," he replied softly. "With both of you." The moment lingered, a quiet decision, unspoken promise, and acknowledgement of mutual vulnerability. Pride gave way to courage, fear to hope, and admiration to connection. They had both chosen to risk, to trust, and to embrace the possibility of love. As they returned to the workshop, a subtle shift had occurred. Samantha carried herself with renewed confidence, unburdened by judgment. Alexander's presence was no longer distant or restrained. It was protective, supportive, and fully engaged. Their worlds, once separated by circumstance and expectation, now converged in collaboration, respect, and anticipation of what lay ahead. Sunlight streamed through the office windows, illuminating the gleaming surfaces and polished floors of Callahan Enterprises. Samantha adjusted Noah's small backpack as they entered the conference room for a final presentation. Today was not just about proposals or business. It was about recognition, respect, and the culmination of weeks of courage, perseverance, and quiet determination. Alexander stood by the boardroom table, reviewing documents, yet his gaze frequently drifted toward Samantha. It was no longer detached observation. It was admiration tempered with patience, respect, and a growing sense of connection. He noticed the way she handled Noah with natural ease, balancing professional focus and motherhood seamlessly. Every gesture, every confident step, reinforced why he had been drawn to her from the very beginning. As Samantha began to present her ideas, her voice steady and assured, Alexander's attention sharpened. He noted the depth of her insights, the clarity of her vision, and the thoughtful solutions she proposed. The board, once skeptical of her presence, leaned in, captivated by her expertise. The contrast between initial judgment and the respect she commanded now was palpable. Noah, seated quietly beside her, occasionally glanced up, offering a shy smile that seemed to reflect pride in his mother. Samantha met his gaze briefly and felt a warmth that spread through her chest, a reminder of why she had persisted, why she had refused to shrink, and why she had chosen to trust. When the presentation concluded, Alexander rose and addressed the board. "I've witnessed firsthand the dedication, intelligence, and resilience Samantha brings, not only in her professional capabilities but in how she balances life's demands with grace. I am confident that she will be an invaluable asset to this company." His words were precise, commanding, yet infused with genuine admiration. The board members nodded, the weight of prior skepticism lifting as recognition took its place. Samantha's chest swelled with relief and pride. This was more than professional validation. It was acknowledgement of her humanity, her perseverance, and her worth. Noah clapped softly, drawing a proud smile from her. Alexander approached, standing close enough for a private exchange. "You've earned this, Samantha. Every challenge, every obstacle, every moment you persisted, it's led to this recognition." His voice softened as his gaze lingered. "And I want you to know, I see not just your talent, but your heart. That will never go unnoticed." Her eyes glistened, a mixture of gratitude and quiet vulnerability. "Thank you, Alexander, for believing not just in me, but in Noah and in what I can accomplish." He smiled, offering his hand, not just as a gesture of professionalism, but as a symbol of partnership, trust, and connection. Samantha took it, a subtle yet profound acknowledgement of mutual respect and the emotional bond that had grown between them. The weeks that followed brought subtle but meaningful shifts. Samantha continued her work, fully integrated into the team, while Alexander remained present, offering guidance and support without overpowering her autonomy. Their relationship evolved naturally, grounded in mutual admiration, shared purpose, and an emerging personal connection. One evening, Alexander invited Samantha and Noah to his penthouse for a small dinner, a gesture that symbolized inclusion and trust. The city stretched endlessly outside, lights shimmering like distant stars, mirroring the possibilities unfolding within. Alexander engaged with Noah effortlessly, his warmth genuine and unforced, while Samantha observed, a sense of peace settling over her. Later, standing on the terrace, Alexander reached for Samantha's hand. "You've shown me a perspective I never knew I needed," he said softly. "Strength, courage, and love don't always follow the path I expected, but I'm grateful they've led me to you." Samantha smiled, a tear tracing down her cheek. "And you've shown me that recognition, respect, and partnership can exist without compromise or fear. That love doesn't demand perfection, it demands authenticity." They embraced, a long, tender moment filled with relief, triumph, and connection. The challenges, judgment, and resistance of previous weeks faded, replaced by a quiet certainty. They had chosen courage, trust, and vulnerability, and in doing so, had found something rare and enduring. Noah ran between them, giggling, and the three stood together, a small family forged by persistence, love, and recognition. Alexander lifted Noah briefly, spinning him gently, and Samantha laughed freely, her heart unburdened. In that simple joy, all previous tension, fear, and uncertainty melted away. The journey, from rejection and judgment to respect, trust, and love, had reached its culmination. Their worlds, once separated by circumstance, expectation, and fear, had merged seamlessly, grounded in mutual admiration, emotional connection, and shared purpose. Have you ever been recognized for your courage and perseverance in a way that changed everything? How did it feel to be truly seen? Share your story in the comments. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.